Doc, need one. One, Roger.
521.
You started me a card for a parking problem.
And for your 23.
Yes, that's for I'll get a 28 from one truck when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Here's a line truck, Boy Lincoln X-ray 985, should come back up and heading slowly.
So you had 2000 Patrick Spalding.
10-4. If you can just put a little note on the log that I'm going to be leaving a note on his vehicle advising him to remove it.
Fuck. Fuck.
Board. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome back to my channel. I am joined today by Cherie Faus-Smith, and she is a coach, and she works with domestic abuse survivors. She's also the author of the book, The Cycle Ended, Saying Goodbye to Domestic Abuse. So thank you so much for joining us, Cherie. We really welcome you here to our channel. And, you know, I'd really love to talk to you about the work that you do, and particularly about your book, because I think that is a really big thing, is trying to get people to understand that most abusive relationships, it is not just one abusive relationship, it's a cycle of abuse, that if we don't really try to be mindful about what it is that we're getting ourselves into, that it can continue and perpetuate pretty much forever, you know, if we don't do whatever we need to do in order to stop it. So can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do and how you got into it?
Sure. So my experience with domestic abuse actually began when I was 16. And I met this guy in a parking lot at a grocery store. And at that time, you know, we're all young and we want to feel loved and appreciated. And he just drew me in. So from then on, I continued on with other relationships that were unhealthy until I met my current husband, and we're happily married and celebrated 19 years. But I got into this because I started talking to other women who were in these unhealthy relationships, and then I could relate to them, and then I shared my story with them. So I never had an intention of writing this book, but then I found out that if I'm experiencing this and I'm meeting others who are, it was a really good time for me to share my story in order to help others.
Yeah, you know, and again, it's something we don't realize, particularly as people who are in abusive relationships, right? So you're in an abusive relationship and there's a pattern of behavior, and maybe something happens and you leave that relationship, and we always end up being drawn to people who repeat the patterns of behavior because it's familiar. It's what we know. And as someone who grew up watching someone in an abusive relationship, it was just the norm, right? Like, this is how I understood that a relationship was supposed to be. And, you know, and my brothers understood that, okay, this is as a man, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so we don't understand that this type of behavior isn't actually good, and it sure as hell isn't right. So in your experience, like, what could people do to help work towards ending the cycle of abuse?
Well, I kind of look at this as an addiction. When we get involved in relationships like this, it's an addiction. So we have to first, it's like being addicted to drugs or alcohol. First, we have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge that we are drawn to these types of people. And then we have to make a plan. You know, once we're in that, what plan are we going to make to leave, and then how to recover? So there are these steps. And I think that, you know, when we're in these relationships, there is a part of me that believes, and this may not be true for everybody, but for me, I knew they were wrong. Being in it, seeing this, how I'm treated, I knew that it wasn't normal. I didn't come from a family that my father abused my mother or vice versa. So I knew it was wrong, but I was addicted to it. It was like, I didn't want them to leave me. I didn't want to be alone. I wanted someone to show affection and take to the movies or, introduce me as their girlfriend. So I didn't want to give that up. So when we're in that relationship, it is really hard to get out unless we acknowledge it and make a plan and then have the opportunity to recover and work with somebody who can help them with those steps.
Right. And it's funny that, you say we are addicted, or it is like an addiction, right? So, and you have to acknowledge that it's happening. And then, for me, when I got out of the bad relationships and actually ended up with a really nice guy, it was completely foreign to me. And I tried everything that I could to destroy the relationship because I was like, okay, something's not right here. I don't understand what you're playing at, what you're trying to get at, what your ulterior motive is. So I tried to destroy the relationship and push him away because it was something that was completely foreign to me. And, fortunately at the time when I started seeing him, I was an alcoholic. So not only was I in abusive relationships, but then I also drank, but I drank to cope because I'd been abused as a child and then, suffered abusive relationships as an adult. And alcohol is just an easy coping mechanism. It's, widely available and it's super easy to use. And so I ended up quitting drinking, and after I quit drinking, I kind of figured out okay, the problem is me. it's not him. It's me. And I acknowledged that I had a problem and was able to, work on myself because I had low self-esteem and zero self-worth, which I think a lot of these people who are abusers, they prey on that in people, or they beat you down so that you feel like you have no self-worth so that you stay.
And I love how you said that this new relationship was foreign to you. I can relate to that. I met my husband on an online dating service when that wasn't popular. So that was in 2000. So it wasn't like swipe left or right. And his profile was super nice. I love candlelight dinners, da 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 da. I'm like, oh, he's too nice. Why would I want to date him? I needed something that showed he was a bad boy, like something that I could cling on to know that he wasn't this perfect person, because that'd be boring. And then the more we talked, I found out he was a guitarist in a band. And I thought, okay, there we go. There's a little bit of that. And so, I too then and I had a 3-year-old son when I left. So, Craig was building this home that we live in, and I didn't have any intention of moving in. I just wanted to be closer to him. So I was looking for jobs, and then he did ask us to move in once it was completed. But there was a part that I wanted to always keep, like maybe 15% in the back of my head. I could leave, I could run, I could make an excuse. I don't have to be here, right? He could do one stupid thing and that would just say, okay, I'm done, right? Because we're not used to that. We're not used to being treated with kindness and love. And, there is that ulterior motive. Why is he being kind? Is he going to come home later tonight and really be angry? And then here I am again. It's like our radar was always up, but we knew the unhealthy. Now we've got the good, but will the good become unhealthy? So we're on edge. And I think even after 20 years, there are triggers. He'll say something to me and he doesn't mean any harm by it, but it will just trigger me and it will anger me and I will go into my shell. And it's like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done, right? That is just silly thinking, but it's my defense mechanism. It's my way of just controlling what I can control, because when you're in these abusive relationships, you have zero control.
No, we think we have some semblance of control, but really we don't. And it's funny that you mentioned that, you kept thinking like, I'm just gonna like leave the option open in case whatever. So when my husband asked me to marry him, I was like, okay, but we need to get married on our anniversary on a Saturday, which pushed it out like years. And I just kept pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off because I was like, I don't, and here's the funny thing about my abusive situations is I still had very, very low self-esteem and very low self-worth. And I, up until just a couple of years ago, my husband and I have also been together for 19 years, didn't even believe that I was good enough for him. And I'm like, if I'm not married to him, it's easier for him to walk away, for him to say, you know what, I'm done with this broken whatever, and like I don't need to deal with it anymore. And so I was like, no, we don't need to get married. We don't need to get married. And so, these relationships, they really, really, I mean, even though I've been working on myself for the last 20 years, these deep-seated psychological things are still like really, really ingrained in who we are and how we act towards other people. And it can really be detrimental to a lot of relationships. So when you're working with a lot of your clients, what do you see is like the most common pattern with people who are either in abusive relationships or who have just gotten out of abusive relationships with like behavior towards other people, whether it's another romantic partner or even a relationship with a friend? Because I know even, having a relationship with a friend or a family member can be difficult, when you're in an abusive relationship, because they're on the outside looking in, seeing that, sometimes I know what's going on, sometimes I don't, sometimes they have an idea, but they don't really say anything. So, what do you see with your clients are like the biggest problems for people that are, in these situations?
So the biggest problem is they don't leave. They make excuses. I will wait till I have enough money. He's not as bad when he's not drinking. I'm afraid he can't take care of himself if I'm not there, right? So there are excuses. So they stay in it because it's what they know, just like you said before. So when I work with them, I try to create a plan. What does your life look like a year from now? What do you want to accomplish? It can be very frustrating for me because I am on the other side and I have to put myself in their positions. I was in their position, but they have to be ready as well. So they make excuses because they're not ready. And, I do have two friends who are still in these relationships, and, they leave one, they get into another, they leave that one, they get into another. And it is because of low self-esteem, or they don't feel worthy enough, or they just don't want to be alone, right? And I think the biggest thing is when you've been in unhealthy relationships, or you have an unhealthy relationship with a parent, let's codependency, it is really important for you to take that time away to live alone. It's getting to know who you are. I remember the first time my husband had asked me what I wanted for dinner. I didn't know. I couldn't tell you because I was so conditioned to appease the person I was with,
Right.
that I would make sure that they were happy. What did they want for dinner? What was their favorite meal? I'd be happy to make that, even if I despised it. And only recently have I started to find my voice in that area. I don't like spaghetti, but I made it for my husband and son for all these years. They're like, oh, can we have spaghetti? Nah, I'll make it for you, but I'm not going to eat it, right? So there is a point where we have to stand up and find our voice and say, enough is enough. I know who I am. I know what I deserve. I know what I'm worthy of, which is very difficult when we're conditioned for years to be told that we are nothing, that we are trash, that no one's going to love us. If we leave them, who's going to love us, right? So it makes us feel like we're not attractive enough. One of my friends is trying to break off this very unhealthy relationship. They're not together, but they're still talking. And she made a comment. She read the text to me, and what she heard was, I'm not attractive. But what he said in the text was, I'm no longer attracted to you. So how often do we hear what we want to hear and then turn it and spin it? So that's a whole nother aspect. When we leave, then we're alone. Is somebody going to want to be with us? Of course there is, but it has to be healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing too, is, so many people are so afraid to be alone, and they're just so desperate for any attention. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's really just not good attention. A lot of times there's people, I mean, they're called predators for a reason. And, it might not be a sexual predator. You mean, Lord knows that they exist, but there are far more, predators that prey on weak people. I mean, look at all the bullying, and it's just, you're in a relationship with a bully, basically, and you're allowing them to bully you. And I think a big problem too is we don't want to admit that we made a mistake. And then we don't know how to ask for help. So, we don't want to be like, yeah, I picked the doozy this time. How can somebody help me figure out how to get out of this and move on with my life? So typically your clients, you work with people who are in domestic abuse relationships that are trying to get out of. Is that your main?
That has been, the majority. I think that just because I know many of them, and because I can relate to them, it seems like I'm very open about my story. So I get more clientele who are actually in, and I'm helping them create a plan. And, one thing I do want to preface, that if someone is listening and they're saying, hey, I want out, please remember the first 48 hours are the worst. You need to have a plan. You need to talk to a friend. You need to have a to-go bag packed and at their place, because this heightens the abuser's control, and they don't want you to leave. Sure. So really have a plan, even if it is talking to the police in your community that you are planning to leave. This is where you will be. And then have a PFA. Make sure that you seek out getting a protection from abuse order to keep them at bay, to protect yourself. It is a very scary time, and very critical are those first 48 hours. So, it's not as easy as just, I'm going to open up the door and take my stuff. Sometimes it can work if you're with somebody who's like, okay, fine, get out. But there are others who it heightens, and it can be really bad. So, please just remember that.
Yeah. And I've also talked to a couple of other people about, if you're planning on leaving and you do get a PFA or a PPO, to let everybody that your abuser knows. So if you just up and disappear, this person's obviously going to try and find you. They're not just going to take for face value that you're gone. They're going to try and find you, because that's just what they do. After you leave, they become obsessive. And I was just telling someone earlier today that I've been out of my last abusive relationship for over 20 years. And I still get messages every once in a while, from him, like, just let it go already, dude. I mean, it's been 20 years. So they'll hold on to stuff for a really, really long time. But to let everybody that they know, so that, if they're trying to find you, then, whoever they're calling can say, you know what, I don't know where she is, or I don't know where he is. And if you work to let your place of employment know, because a lot of times we don't want to let people we work with know that we're in this situation, and that we're going through this. And then, the person shows up at your work, and then things escalate, and it can be really, really difficult to deal with. So if they're prepared ahead of time, then they can do whatever they need to do to keep, things from going from bad to worse. So when you're working with the people on a plan, what does a typical plan look like besides obviously making the decision to leave?
Right. So the plan is have a to-go bag packed and have that at a friend or family that would have the major things: your birth certificate, your license, money, clothing, a cell phone that like one of those pay phones so that they can't reach you. So that's step one. Step two is to, like you said, talk to your friends or family, say, hey, I am planning on leaving. This is the date I'm leaving, and this is where I'm going. Contact a lawyer to get this PFA or, a domestic violence service that can help you. And really, it's about healing. When I talk to them, this plan is to decide, why are you doing this? How can you break free of this? Let's work on you. Let's see why you're doing this so you don't repeat that. But the big part is getting them to safety. Let's create this plan and stay in touch. I've had friends who have left and I've stayed in touch via text. I'm here, I'm safe. Okay, I want to know tomorrow that you're okay. And then we create that plan of, okay, now you're where you're safe. Let's work on the next steps. But it's not as easy as that. There's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with that. And there are people that I tell with my story. I left my ex-husband, my son's father, because he had put his hands on me. Before then, it was all emotional and financial. And my mother had she would drive past the house and stop in to see her grandson. And she had a mother's intuition that day that she had to stop. And when I told her what happened, she said, pack your bags, you're coming to our house. And I did, because I wanted to feel safe.
Yeah.
But there was a part of me that I wanted to go back. Why did I want to go back? One, I didn't want to be with my parents. Two, that was my home. Three, that's where I was comfortable. And four, I missed him. Was he going to be able to cook for himself and clean the house and do his laundry? All those things that we as women become nurturers, and we want to make sure they're okay. Even though they're harming us, we still take on that role of wanting to take care of them and protect them. Why would we talk bad about them? That's the big thing too, is you don't share your story because someone is going to say, oh, he's not that bad. What? Oh, he was just, oh, really? And then we feel like idiots, right? Because we start second guessing. Mm-hmm. He really isn't that bad, is he? So, you can leave and you're drawn back, but you have to be strong. So that's part of that plan that I help them develop a sense of their own worth, a sense of their own identity, who they are, that they are worthy, that they're strong, right? You're a warrior, right? So if you can stand up and find your voice and say, hey, good riddance to you, I've got a better life ahead of me, that's the goal, but there's a lot of work to it.
Yeah. I like how you said, to be a warrior, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get out of a relationship, an abusive relationship. And it's interesting because so you were in an emotionally abusive relationship. So I grew up in a physically violent household. And so I was like, I will never, ever be in a relationship with a man who ever lays a finger on me. And so what do? I get in relationships with men who are emotionally and financially abusive. And it wasn't until after that, my last relationship was over, and it was probably like 3 or 4 years after, that I realized that what he was doing was actually a form of abuse. Because a lot of people don't realize that, domestic violence is far more than, fists. You say violence, and a lot of people think that immediately, you're being hit. He never laid a finger on me, never once. He tried to one time, and then it took 5 people to pull me off of him. But he never ever laid a finger on me. And so there are a lot of different ways that you can be abused without actually it being like physical.
It's intimidation.
Yeah.
There's intimidation factor. My ex would stand in the doorway of my son's bedroom when I was putting him to bed and tell me I wasn't leaving. And he's 2 inches shorter than me. He was a little guy. But the intimidation factor of what would he do to me? Is he going to do something to me in front of my child? So there is that bullying.
Yeah.
And if I would dress up for work, why are you wearing that? Who are you going to be hanging out with? Or are you having a date afterwards? And, these are the triggers that, and like I said, my husband doesn't mean any harm by that. If I get all dressed up because I'm doing a live video or whatever, he'll be like, oh, you have a date today? I'm like, no, just doing a live video. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why would he say that? It takes me way back. He loves me and he doesn't care. Like, it was just a comment. And I'm like, I had to be honest with him and say, I know you're joking, but that was something said to me before, right? So 20 years later, it's still there, right? Like you're saying, there are still things that we have to work through, even though we're happy and moved on. Yeah, there's still things there.
Yeah, there's always going to be things that come up. Doing this series with people, I've been talking to different people from different experiences all around the world. And it's interesting for me, through talking about all these different things, all of the stuff that I repressed, they're all the things that I rationalized or normalized about the behavior. And I'm like, wait a minute, that really wasn't right. What, I really shouldn't have let him do that, or I really should have done something different. And so, again, through this series, I'm really hoping that, when people watch these videos, that they hear something that is going to make them think that either a situation they're in isn't okay, or someone that they know in isn't okay. And maybe, just start having conversations. For the people that you work with who are in these abusive relationships, how difficult is it for them to actually talk to other people about what they're going through?
It's very tough.
To be open and honest about what you're going through.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I think they can share it with me because they know that I've been through it, but to actually share it with your family, your children, because there is the shame involved and you don't want them looking down on you. You really want your family to see you as a strong person. And when you're not, there's like a check mark against you, right? That, oh, what's wrong with you? So for them, yeah, they're slowly finding their voice. Like they are able to share little bits and pieces. I think that when they're out and they are stronger and they feel confident, they'll be able to share that with their own voice and knowing that no one's judging them, right? There are so many of us who have been there. Sharing their story is going to help one more person. It's a silent epidemic. And if we don't speak up and we don't start sharing our stories, there are going to be so many who are living in silence and they don't know where to turn. So it's taking our power, our knowledge, our confidence to say, hey, we're here for you.
Yeah. And it's truly sad how many people don't say anything because of things like victim blaming, shame, and judgment. And it's truly sad that we live in a world where if I were to say I was abused, that I have to fear retribution or judgment. That doesn't seem fair. So not only are you going through the abuse of the relationship, but then you're also, being bullied or abused from, outside sources. And I think that is a big problem with why a lot of people don't speak up. And I remember specifically, like when I was a kid, and you know, things would happen to either myself or my mother, you would hear people say like, oh, you know, what did you do? What did you say? How did you act? You must have done something wrong, you know. And it's absolutely asinine to me that this was something that people would say, like we deserved it, you know, like, oh well, you must have deserved it. Like, no, nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. Even like criminals on death row don't deserve that. Everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect and not have to fear physical violence or emotional abuse. You know, everyone deserves love, everyone deserves happiness. And, you know, I think letting everyone know that regardless of whether you're afraid of, you know, feeling shame or judgment, that you still need to do it anyway, right? I mean, people are going to criticize you. It's just a fact of life. People are going to judge you. It's just a fact of life. And you have to act in spite of that. You have to do what's right for you and what's best for you. And getting out of an abusive relationship is going to be what's best for you in the long run. It may not seem like it while you're trying to go through it, because, you know, having been in some and seen other people going through it, I mean, it can be really traumatic and in some cases truly horrifying what these people go through in the like the lengths that they'll go to try and get to the people who are trying to leave. But you know, if we keep speaking up and speaking out about what's going on, then more and more people will realize just how big of a problem this is. And I think we need to normalize the conversations about what's going on, because I've mentioned it in numerous videos with other people that I've talked about. Like, you can work next to someone for 20 years and not know that they're being abused because we get so good at hiding it.
I love what you just said. You know, I think that everything you just said is going to touch many people. Like, you know, especially the part, it speaks to me when you said, nobody deserves this. You know, I've been told, well, there are women who deserve that. They did something to deserve that. It doesn't matter if I tell my husband I don't like something. He has no, like, there should be no way for him to raise his hand at me or call me names or say anything, right? So these people who are abusing us, they are bullies. I just love everything you said. I can't even, like, I love it. I love it. Like, it just, you know, it spoke to me and I've been through it. And for you to share that is really going to touch some others. Yeah.
So, you know, if you had one truly succinct word of wisdom to share with people, or, you know, something to share with people about the work that you do and the things that you see, what you wish more people knew, what would it be?
I wish they just knew their worth. I really wish that they would listen to others, watch this, hear what we're saying, take our advice, and know that you don't deserve this. You don't deserve to be in an unhealthy relationship, an abusive relationship. Make the plans, create a plan, and get out.
Awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today, for sharing your story and for doing the work that you do, because you know, I can't even imagine doing the work that you do. I mean, I work with women who are outside of, you know, traumatic relationships, and, you know, who are working through like trying to process the trauma and move forward in their lives. But I can't imagine how difficult it must be working with people who are in the situations trying to get out, because I think that's far more difficult, because sometimes you can lose people, you know. And when I say lose people, like they decide I can't leave. And then, you know, that these people are in a relationship or in a situation that is detrimental to their health and physical well-being, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, I really appreciate what you're doing. And whether those ladies know it or not, you're doing a tremendous amount of work, and you're a true light to the world. So thank you so much for being here with us again. Any of you that are watching this, I'm going to leave the information for Cherie in the link, in the video comments, so that you can find her website, her social media, and everything. There will be a link for her books. You can check it out. I think it would be a really tremendous read, particularly if you're getting out of an abusive relationship and you really don't want to end up in another abusive relationship. I think it's beneficial for us to recognize the signs before it becomes too late, because I think that is a big problem. Is, a lot of times when we get into these situations, before we realize what's actually happening, we've been in it for a while and it's kind of a little too late. So being mindful and paying attention to the signs before you get too far in can be really, really beneficial for us. And check out more of the videos. There's going to be more videos coming out for the rest of the month, with more people telling their stories and talking about the work that they do and how they're helping. And again, thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.